Expat Survival Guide. In order to thrive, you have to survive these 10 critical things. Stick around, we're going to tell you at the end how not to get pushed off the roof. Today we're going to talk about a crucial guide for Western men, expats, whether you're heading to Mexico, Ecuador, Thailand, Malaysia, Vietnam, or the Philippines. Any exotic destination where you might find a change in your life. You've had it. You can't take it anymore. You're going to make a change. You've got the plan, the 90-day plan for when to go online, how to get boots on the ground, some of the fundamentals. You've also got a guide on where to live your first year. Today, we're going to tell you about the really crucial things, survival as an expat. Don't forget to like and hit that subscribe button. Here we go. First things first, healthcare. And there was a video yesterday that blew up. One of the new vloggers in this space interviewed a man. He came to the Philippines. He married a 19-year-old and had a stroke. So this is really important. You're thinking about coming to the tropical country of the Philippines or Vietnam or Thailand. You're thinking about going to Mexico. The water is not the healthiest. You want to get yourself on a plan to be ready to be out and about with a younger woman. We don't want to have an expensive medical situation arise, because when we got here we found out that you could buy a bottle of tequila for $2 US. And greasy food is really cheap too. So before you travel, get yourself healthy, go see a doctor, think about a hepatitis shot, think about some other medicines you might want to bring with you, think about any other health conditions. Make sure you arrive healthy. And when you get here, what are you going to do if you do have an accident, a health insurance situation? So know your health insurance back home. Know if your plan back home will cover you. Mine covers me for the first 60 days out of the country. And then I buy what's known as a peso plan, and I pay, based on age, $1,050 US per year. I get reimbursed 750,000 pesos, Philippine pesos. It's about $17,000. What is your medical plan? Do you have medical evacuation? How are you going to get back to your home country to receive medical care in case of a heart attack, in case of a bad fall, in case of a bad auto accident? Will you have the cash? Will you have the means to pay for it continuously? And what about your loved one too? Do you have a health plan to survive the expat experience there? Next is finances. And there's story after story you hear. People love to make videos about expats who came to the Philippines or came to Asia or came to Mexico 3 or 4 years before their pensions kick in, and they start buying houses, they start going to resorts, they meet young women, they show off, they help build a house for her mother. And we had an interview on our channel where an expat came before retirement, before a pension. His wife cheated on him. He moved out of the apartment they were renting. He was not able to access his money, and he ended up homeless on the beach and eventually got thrown in prison and has extracted himself after 7 years from some serious legal problems. Many, many stories of people who've been lied to, cheated, and they had spent a lot of money, put houses in their girlfriend or wife's names. Their pension money is held up because some countries require proof of life. You know, they don't want to keep sending pensions if the person's died and the relatives just keep accepting the money. Is someone there to receive your mail? Do you have 2 debit cards so that you can leave your passport and 1 debit card locked up in a safe when you're out and about? Do you have a way to send money? Do you have a Wise account or a Remitly account? Do you have a debit card that doesn't charge transaction fees? Every time you buy a cheeseburger for $2, you don't want to have a 50-cent transaction fee. Do you have a Google Voice number so that you can have a second-step identification, verification process work while here in Asia? Do you have a backup plan for your finances? Have you a budget? Do you know what it'll cost to live here? Have you looked into the type of housing and the type of city you want to live in? Are you sure you can afford the financial cost and psychological burden in an unsafe neighborhood just because the budget numbers work? And what if you decide you want to leave and start over? Are you going to replace your furniture, your refrigerator, your motorbike? Make sure you have your financial house in order to survive. Legal matters. I mentioned earlier, there are certain laws of what you can do as an expat. Here in the Philippines, it's against the law to talk about politics, to get involved in politics. It is not legal to have these, you wouldn't want to go on a radio show and start giving your opinion about politics. It's against the law to get in the street and start yelling and screaming and calling somebody a fraud. They can bring charges against you. And really, if any local person brings charges against you, your girlfriend, your wife, the neighbor, a vendor, good luck. You're in a foreign country, and tie goes to the local. And so know the visa rules, know the visa requirements, know what you have to do, how you have to do it. Make sure you follow through on all of your visa requirements. Make sure you have the money necessary to handle your immigration and visa. And make sure that when it comes to executing a lease, executing a contract, making your housing accommodations contracted for, make sure you're doing it legal. Lawyers here in Asia are pretty cheap. And, like in most of the world, the person with the most free legal or the best legal advice wins. So make sure you follow the rules, make sure you follow the laws, make sure you understand the driving laws. Can you drive a scooter without a local motorcycle certificate? Can you use your home license? What about insurance? What happens if you get in an accident with a local person? Before you get to Asia, while you're in Asia, you need to build a social network. You're going to need to have friends. One of the problems with being back west and being an older man is you sort of get ghosted, you get to become invisible, your friends kind of disappear, people are married and you're single, and it's very difficult. Here in Asia and in Mexico and other expat destinations, there are a lot of expats and you have a lot in common, and people tend to bond very quickly, and there's a lot of opportunity. So you want to join your social networks, you want to get into these Facebook groups. If you go to Dumaguete in the Philippines, join the expat group in Dumaguete. So you want to integrate yourself into the society, into the culture, and into your network. Gain insights, gain local knowledge, have referrals, figure out where to buy things, where to go on vacation, what type of place to meet women, what type of circumstances they've been to or known of before you. Use their knowledge and best practices. It's going to be vital if you are going to survive as an expat. Don't be a loner. Don't hole up with a cute 23-year-old for 6 months and never meet anybody, never know anybody. And then one day she doesn't come home and there you are, no friends, you don't know anybody, you haven't integrated yourself into society. Get out and get to know the other expats. Join the bulletin boards, join the Facebook groups, make some friends. Now, where are you going to live? We've talked about the expat first year housing plan. I go into great depth about the types of survival strategies, primarily short-term. Let me say it again, short-term. You are in a third world country. There are environmental inconveniences like noise and businesses operating next door that can make your life a living hell. Just because you can live on $600 or $1,000 or $1,500 a month doesn't mean you're going to want to. So do you want to live in the mountains with a breeze? Do you want to live on the ocean and go scuba diving twice a week? Do you want to be surfing at the beach? Do you want to be in a small beach town? Do you want to be in a town with a boardwalk? Do you want to be in a big city with all the modern conveniences? You need to figure this out. If you're going to survive, not only do you need to figure out to take short-term rentals and don't get locked into a bad, ugly situation, you do need to figure out where you want to live. Bangkok, it's kind of crazy. Is that too big a city for you? Pattaya, Sin City. Do you want to be in Phuket? It's a little bit far from the airport and a little bit more expensive than it needs to be. Where are you going to find happiness? Now, maybe you need to live close to your girlfriend, close to your fiance, close to your wife. That's a big consideration. Women in Asia want to be near their family. If you take them too far away, they're going to have to go home and visit. Maybe they go home without you. Maybe you have to do a lot of traveling. There's a lot of expense involved. If you live too close to your relatives, they might be over for dinner 3 times a week and you can't keep the refrigerator full. So how far from your girlfriend's family is very, very important. And is your mother-in-law going to move in the first week that you're in the house? So you want to survive. You want to survive Asia. You want to survive Mexico. You want to survive the expat experience. you better figure out your housing plan correctly. Transportation is a big deal. In some countries like Malaysia, the infrastructure is really good. Buses run on time, they're clean, they're efficient, there are trains, you can get around really well. Taxis are cheap, they're clean. In other countries like Mexico, you know, taxis can be a little bit of a crapshoot. When I was an executive and I used to travel all over the world on business, in Mexico we had a rule: never get into a taxi unless you're in front of a 5-star hotel. Now, I've spent months and months in Puerto Vallarta, and we have the guard call any taxi, and we wave down taxis there. So maybe it was a Mexico City rule, maybe we were a little too overcautious. So you got to be careful. These countries have Uber and Grab, but it's not always what you think it is. It can be very difficult here in Philippines sometimes to get a Grab. We don't own a car. We find using taxis very, very inexpensive. It's actually less expensive to use taxis than to own a car. But we have many expat friends, they have beautiful cars, they have nice cars. Now, they tell me they were almost in an accident last week, or there was flying debris in the road, they barely missed it, or you know, they broke a headlight. There's a lot of craziness on the road here. So eventually getting a car is something you could do. Many expats get a motorcycle. You can rent a motorcycle for $100 or $150 a month or less. And the problem is almost all expats will tell you that if you haven't gone down, you will go down. You have dogs racing in front of your motorcycle, chasing you down the street. It can be a big issue, gravelly roads, bad infrastructure. Having a motorcycle is a very efficient and cost-effective way to get around, but it could be something that you might not survive. The other option, here in the Philippines, a lot of people get mini cabs. These are teeny little utility trucks that are used in Japan, and what happens is they cut them into 3 pieces and import them, and they avoid paying the import taxes because it's all cut up and it's not actually a used vehicle, it's just parts. But then they weld it back together, fix the engine that has 150,000 miles on it, and they are really cheap. I have a friend that paid as little as like $1,400 US for a mini cab. Now, he had to put another, you know, up to $1,000 into it, but he only pays $100 in insurance and registration a year. So where you live and your transportation kind of play off each other, it's really important that you're able to get good transportation. If you're not in a situation, you know, you want to spend little money, you want to live in the middle of nowhere, you want to move to a compound, you can't get a taxi to come pick you up. You know, you have to beg a neighbor for a ride. It's not a good look, it's not a good situation, it's not a good quality of life. So you need to figure out your transportation in conjunction with where you're going to live and your financial budget. Now, before I tell you how not to get thrown off a roof, you're gonna have a culture shock. Things are different. Get used to it. Stop complaining. So tip number 1 is get used to the foreign culture. Learn a little bit about it in advance. Start to learn a little bit of the language. 15 to 25 phrases. You're going to Thailand, you're going to Mexico. Get the fundamentals down. Learn some of the culture. Enjoy the culture. You're going to Thailand, enjoy Songkran Festival and get a big squirt gun. You're coming to Philippines, go to Cebu City for Sinulog. You want to embrace the culture of the country that you're going to. Learn a little bit about it. Some of the etiquette. We have a video on the 25 things not to do in the Philippines. Don't touch somebody on top of the head. Understand what a blessing is when you meet a younger person. Understand the local customs and be prepared to enjoy them. It's not just the food. And in some countries, like the Philippines, it can be against the law to get into a fight or an argument outside. We have had an instance recently where an expat vlogger got into an argument with a vendor. And charges have been brought up just because he was shouting and yelling at the vendor from the road. You need to know what is allowed and what is not allowed. It's critical to know the language if you're really going to survive. You know, I speak about 50% Spanish. Earlier this year, I spent 25 days in Spanish-speaking countries in South America. And boy, you know, it started to click. And then here in the Philippines, you know, Tagalog and Cebuano, Visayan, it's about 15 to 20% Spanish. And then they use about 15 to 20% English too. So like when Chrissy's talking to her mother, I kind of know they're not talking about me, or I know what they're talking about. But it's helpful to know the language. In a foreign country where English is really maybe only spoken by the younger people, it's nice to know the language. At a minimum, you have to know how to say thank you and hello. Those are the two. If you can go almost anywhere in the world. You go to Russia, you can say spasibo. Just a few phrases will get you by. If you're going to be a long-term expat, you're going to be living or speaking with other people. It's nice to know what they're talking about when you're in the taxi and you don't get that icky feeling that they're talking about you. You know, I hate it when we go out on an excursion and some 40-year-old guy thinks he's won the lottery. He's going to spend the day with my beautiful Filipina, and he wants to start talking to her in the local language like I'm a bump on a log in the back seat. I'm like, wait, no, 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 no. So I really think if you can learn some of the language here, myself, I think I can speak 15 words of Cebuano, and I understand a lot of Spanish, and they use a lot of English too. So I don't feel totally like a fish out of water. But not just do you need the customs, but you need to know some of the language. Let's talk about real survival. Like, you know, you want to be alive a year from now to go home and visit your kids and your family. As a rule, you know, when you get in trouble is when you drink and you leave the bar late and you are walking down side streets getting back to your Airbnb. You're trying to find your hotel and you're a little bit turned around. Now you find yourself on a dimly lit side street. If you're in Colombia, you are in serious trouble. If you are in almost any country and it's 1 a.m. and you've been drinking, people may have followed you from the bar. People might drive by on motorcycles and just put a screwdriver up to your belly and ask for your cell phone. It's a bad place to be. When you leave a drinking establishment, you should get into a taxi. Do not be a cheap Charlie. Have them take you right to your door. Better if it's a Grab or an Uber. But even better if you leave at 10:30 and you go home at a reasonable hour and don't walk home through strange neighborhoods. Certainly not in South America, Mexico. And in Asia, I think it's way safer. But, you know, there are young men who are in poverty and they're out on their motorcycles, and a crime of opportunity presents itself when they see you stumbling down the road a little bit tipsy. Anything could happen. And, you know, there are lots of people who get pickpocketed and have other types of crime that they're subjected to. People are dog-eat-dog in their financial transactions here in Asia, and they're going to take advantage of you, and you're going to get charged a skin tax if they can get away with it. So when it comes to crime, you need to know the local laws. I mentioned earlier, there's certain things you can't do. You can't get involved in politics. You can't yell at a vendor in the street that he robbed you. You can't violate people's dignity and think that the loss of face is not going to come back. You might be subjected to a lawsuit. You might have a criminal case opened up against you. And when it comes time to leave as an expat, here in the Philippines, you have to get a police clearance after you've been here a while to get out of the country, and that might prevent you from going home. Don't do anything too stupid. So know the laws. Here in the Philippines, it's against the law to cohabitate with a married woman. And guess what? 90% of these women are married if they've got a child, but it's the annulment process is like a year's pay for a teacher or a police officer. It's a year's pay. Very, very, very few people have gone through the process. If the husband's nasty and he wants to shake you down for money, he could threaten to call the barangay captain and call the local police and have you brought up on charges. It's possible. And then be careful. You're in Pattaya, you're in Thailand. A woman looks like she's 23. She says she's 23. If she's 17, you are in a world of trouble. You better ask for her identity card, a real driver's license or an identity card, and take a photo of that card before proceeding. Even if she's 28, 26, get a photo of her identity card before any transaction or any and you find yourself, you know, there is a scam that goes around where you meet two women. One of them's obviously younger. She's, oh, this is my sister. You invite them back to the hotel at the beach. You've got a bungalow at the beach. You invite them into the bungalow. Or worse yet, she tells you her the bulb is out in her bungalow. Can you fix it? She's not tall enough. You go into the bungalow, she closes the door, you're in the bungalow with the 16-year-old, and then there's a knock on the door. It's the police, it's her relatives, and they are gonna want to press charges unless you come up with a lot of money. So be very, very careful of getting trapped in a scam, getting trapped because someone lied about their age. You need to be very careful in Asia, in Mexico, anywhere you go. If the girl doesn't look like she's 30 or older, you better get an ID and never find yourself alone with a minor, ever. You need to have an exit strategy. What are you going to do if you run out of money? If your investments go bad? If the government says you didn't prove that you're alive? There is no money to pay your rent, no money to buy food, no money for an airplane ticket, no money for medical care. Even though it's not expensive, you just don't have the money. Are you going to live on the beach for 3 years like Tony, who we interviewed here on our channel? Are you going to beg like a panhandler? What is your exit strategy? Do you have the money ready to buy an airplane ticket? Not the cheap ticket that you booked 6 weeks, 8 weeks in advance when it was on sale, but the regular 1 week ahead of time ticket. If you need to go home for a funeral, are you going to be able to get home? Are you going to be able to get out of the country if you need to get out of the country? Do you have a plan? Do you know where you're going to go, how you're going to get there, what it's going to cost, and how you're going to live when you get back to your home country? But you need to know if you have the cash to start over. If you have a health condition that forces you to go back to your home country to seek dialysis, which is crazy expensive, but there it's free, okay, where are you going to live? What apartment? What house? Do you have a couch? Do you have a TV? Do you have a refrigerator? Do you have a car? How are you going to get to the dialysis center? How long? What is the medicine going to cost? What is your exit plan? There's the other exit plan that nobody wants to talk about, which is where are you going to be buried? What do you want done with your bodily remains? Are you going to leave it to your Filipina to contact the embassy and, you know, a month later somebody's going to pay to have you? Do you want to be cremated? Are you going to want to be returned? What is your funeral arrangement? How will you leave your Filipina family and Filipina girlfriend to survive? Have you set money aside? Did you teach her a career? Did you send her to college? Has she a skill that she can rely on? Did you do the paperwork so she will get part of your pension as your wife? Or are you just like forgetting about it and you're not worried? What is your exit plan? So make sure you've done some planning when it comes to leaving this world and leaving your loved ones the way you want to leave them. Make sure you've done some planning about your exit if you need to leave the country. There can be volcanoes, there can be earthquakes, there can be tidal waves, there can be political unrest, there could be something like COVID. These are all things as an expat that we don't want to think about, but if you want to survive long term, you do need to think about them. Now, I promised you I would tell you how not to get pushed off a ladder, and here's what I want to share with you. If you are the type of person who cares for your loved ones and you are willing to help their family, maybe you took out a medical insurance policy like I did, and on the form it wants to know who is your beneficiary. Well, is it your family back home or is it your Filipino family here? Maybe it's like me, it's Chrissy for my health insurance plan, not my other plans, but for this one. If you take out a life insurance policy and you fall off the roof, who is the beneficiary? Is it your Filipina? Does her family know that you have a life insurance policy and that your Filipina will get significant funds if you die in an accident? Did you loan money to her brother or her uncle to buy a truck? If you get in an accident, if you fall off the roof, he's not going to have to make payments. If you let it be known that when you're gone, everyone will be taken care of, well, you're providing a powerful incentive for you to be gone and not survive as an expat. And if you don't want to get pushed off the roof, if you don't want to be found dead at the side of the road and people will claim it was an accident, be careful about who you tell that they will become an instant millionaire. Because here in Asia, your life insurance policy could make them extremely wealthy. So there, those are your 10 ways to survive and thrive, and one way not to get pushed off the roof. And I hope that you are fed up and you're not going to take it anymore. You don't want to be the invisible man. You're 60, you're 65. That doesn't mean you can't date a beautiful woman and live a thriving, exciting life in Mexico, in Ecuador, in Spain, in Greece, in Turkey, in Vietnam, in Thailand, in Malaysia, in the Philippines, in the country of your choice, where your pension money can be arbitraged to the point where you have a very healthy budget, that you can live in a nice house, you can have transportation, you can have health care, you can have financial security, you can have a beautiful young woman by your side. Learn a little bit of the language, find out what the laws are, make sure you understand the legal consequences for your actions. Don't get involved in politics. Stay out of the bars late at night and choose wisely your loved one, where you live. Your happiness will depend mostly on those two things. Thanks again. Until next time, join us at Fly Me to the Philippines.